All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Detroit Lions because not only are they currently 8-1, they just had the craziest second half comeback you will see from a Lions game this entire season. 19 unanswered points, folks, in the second half. The score at halftime was 23-7. Guys, the Detroit Lions are 8-1, taking down the Houston Texans on the road 26-23 against all odds. And the craziest statistic you will hear all week is Jared Goff, the starting quarterback for the Detroit Lions, 5 interceptions. This is a game. You play on Madden and then you just force quit. You unplug the PlayStation, you unplug the Xbox because statistics are important when you're playing in a Madden franchise. Jared Goff didn't give a rat's ass. They didn't give a diddly squat, man. 26-23, folks. 13 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Jake Bates, have a day. Hometown hero. Jake Bates, player of the game, in my opinion. Carlton Davis with a couple of interceptions. But isn't that crazy, man? Jared Goff, 15-30, 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. It sounds good in theory. 5 total interceptions for Jared Goff. I think he had like 3 heading into this football game. And you won. You won. This is the perfect example of this is why you have to watch these football games. If you're looking at the box score on Monday morning, heading to work, you're like, what the hell? Jared Goff just threw 5 interceptions. We beat the Houston Texans on the road by 3 points. God dang it. No. Not this, not the stance you want to have here. Welcome back to the channel. Obviously, we are talking about the Detroit Lions in tonight's video. Hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. If you guys want daily Detroit Lions content, check out my Lions channel down below, pinned in the comment section. But Lions fans, we're going to shoot for the stars. We're going to reach for the sky here. I think I said that backwards. If you try and get this video to 800 likes for your 8-1 start, that would mean the absolute world to me. All right, let's dive into this game, all right? Now, typically when I watch a Detroit Lions game in the last year and a half, and they're losing, once again, Detroit was down 10-0 after the first quarter. You were down 23-7 after the first half. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, I'm a Packers fan. 99% of the time when I'm watching a Lions game and they're losing, that hasn't happened too much this season. But like being down 10-0, I think you guys were down 10-0 against Minnesota a couple of weeks ago after the first quarter. Typically, I'm not thinking this team is the worst team, right? I view Detroit as probably the best team in the NFL, although the Kansas City stupid Chiefs just keep on winning. And now they're like 9-0, so that take doesn't have much merit, but I still think the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL. Now, it's just crazy because anytime the Detroit Lions are losing a football game, most of the time I'm thinking to myself, there's no shot they lose. They are the better football team. But for some reason at halftime, well, maybe the reason was being down 23-7 and Jared Goff already throwing a couple of interceptions, it just didn't feel like the Lions' night. It just didn't feel like it. You're on the road. It's Sunday night football. You guys are just turning, Jared Goff's just turning the ball over left and right here, whether it was his fault or a receiver's fault or what have you. 5 interceptions. I mean, it's desperate. It's desperately down bad. This was the first time in the last year and a half where I've watched a Detroit Lions game around halftime thinking to myself, you know what? They might actually lose this football game. No, not true. Despite throwing 5 interceptions, Jared Goff did what he had to do when he had to do it. Jahmyr Gibbs, 19 carries, 71 yards. David Montgomery, 12 carries, 32 yards and a touchdown. All in all, keep in mind the Houston Texans do have a very good defensive team, especially up front with Danielle Hunter. But anyways, the Detroit Lions ran the ball 32 times for only 105 yards, averaging 3.3 yards per carry. So just kind of a really good representation of how bad the Detroit Lions actually played offensively in tonight's game, and they still walked away with a victory. Sam Laporta ended up getting banged up, but he had 3 catches for 66 yards and a touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 6 catches, 60 yards and a touchdown. Gibbs also had 37 yards receiving. But before we get into this defense, guys, real quick, Jameson Williams made his return from his suspension. 3 catches, 53 yards. Doesn't seem too crazy, But if you watched this game or you watched the highlights of this game or you just want to take me with my word for it, Jameson Williams, all three of his catches were absolutely freaking huge. All three of his catches were insanely impressive. Jameson Williams deserves a lot of credit for tonight's victory. But speaking of credit for the victory, before we get into Mr. Jake Bates, Carlton Davis had 2 interceptions. Now, one of them was really interesting because it was like literally the first play of the second half, and Detroit was down 23-7. And it's crazy because on the first play of the second half, Carlton Davis intercepts CJ Stroud, and the Lions don't score points. You literally get the ball around, at the Houston territory at like the 40-yard line. Carlton Davis, first play of the second half, intercepts CJ Stroud, and the Lions did not freaking score points on that drive, which is another really good representation of why, for the first time in a year and a half, I'm sitting here thinking there's no shot the Detroit Lions win this football game. Like, are you serious? How did you win this football game? Brian Branch was everywhere. Jack Campbell was everywhere. Aleem McNeil had another sack. He had another phenomenal game, 6 total tackles, 1 sack in total. Carlton Davis, like we just mentioned, had 2 interceptions. He had a good game defending as well. Josh Paschal, big sack. No Zadarius Smith this evening. We're going to see him hopefully for this upcoming matchup against I want to say it's Tennessee. I actually think that's Minnesota. Yeah, next weekend against the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would assume 100%. Zadarius Smith will be suiting up, but he did not play tonight. Pat O'Connor had a sack. James Houston had a sack. This was a perfect complementary defensive football game. And obviously the main talking point around the Detroit Lions is mainly defensively because of Aiden Hutchinson's injury. Maybe a couple of weeks ago, the main talking point with this Detroit Lions team is, all right, Aiden Hutchinson, one of the league's best defensive player, he's done for the season. Now what? So dudes really stepped up today. You have to give credit where credit is due. CJ Stroud, 19-33, 232 yards, a touchdown and interception. Joe Mixon averaged a whopping 1.8 yards per carry. I get it. Maybe you're thinking the game script wasn't in his favor. No, the Houston Texans starting running back, his name is Joe Mixon, ran the ball 25 times for 46 yards. Did have a stupid touchdown, but he averaged less than 2 yards per carry. So defensively, this was a huge game. Without this defense, man, the Detroit Lions had no business winning this game. You literally threw 5 freaking interceptions and walked away with the victory against one of the better teams, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL in general, on the road. The Detroit Lions are 8-1. That's all we got time for here tonight because it's midnight on the East Coast, stupid East Coast. But thank you for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. Give me your player of the game for the Detroit Lions down below, and we will see you in a day or two